you had the opportunity to have this platform to speak about what really happened that day, what are the types of things that you wanted to get across to people who didn't know any more than what they saw in the news, which is, quite frankly, almost all of us?
Yeah, no, I mean, so, to kind of sum up, like the day of, it was, I was down there with Hoover, and we were pulling out an interpreter and his brother, pulling out a family to bring over. And essentially we had been given intel saying who the bomber was, who he was traveling with the morning of, about 1:30, 2 in the morning, and, passed from various intelligence assets to us, and matched up with various other entities that we were working with as well, had the same intel. And we saw who fit the description in the crowd. And the best way to describe it is like, if I filled up this entire room with sand, that's how many people there were. I mean, it was quite literally hundreds of thousands of people surrounding, like 100 Marines. And, for us, we had spotted who we were past was the bomber, who we knew was the bomber. And, we verified with various other sets of eyes, various other entities that worked with us. And they were like, yeah, that's who fits the description. That's who he is. And that's who he's traveling with. And, denied engagement authority. And our, battalion leadership, was like, I don't know who has the authority to, allow you to engage, when ultimately it's, dissemination of leadership. It should have been on us, but we were told going in, you guys are not allowed to do anything. If something happens, like, this is, you utilize your chain of command and request engagement authority. And we did that. And, ultimately tried halting we did halt operations for, 2 or 3 times that day alone, saying, hey, like, this bomber's in the area. There's video evidence, there's photo evidence of, separately people took on their cell phones and stuff of like, hey, this is, like Reaper 2, our call sign, our team's call sign, like calling over the radio, like, halt operations, the bomber's in the area, like in the hours leading up. And, they just continued to, we'd stop for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then they'd push us back down. And, we were sent out there, and then next thing you know, this dude and who he's traveling with, the bomber, steps out of a crowd of 100,000 people 3 meters away from us and kills 200 people instantly. And 13 Americans, 11 Marines, 1 soldier, and 1 sailor, wounding 45 Americans. And I mean, it was a sea, like, quite literally, where hundreds of people stood shoulder to shoulder, was just completely flattened, body parts, blood everywhere, body matter everywhere, brain matter everywhere. And like, we started getting shot at from farther down the canal. We started getting shot at from the neighborhood. And recently CNN released the only GoPro footage that wasn't handed over, or taken rather, by the DOD. And all of these Gold Star families whose, children were killed in action, like, they haven't been returned their phones. They haven't been returned their video footage from their GoPros. Like, the government won't hand it over. And there's a reason why. But, every single person who wasn't out there, specifically our government, likes to say that things didn't happen the way they did. But all of us who were out there have pretty much the same story. And at the end of the day, that's what we all have to remind ourselves is, like, for me, I know what happened. I was there, right? And my friends who were there, who got shot at, who got blown up, who shot back at the ISIS gunmen, like, we know what happened. And that's what all that matters at the end of the day is, that we know what happened in our hearts and minds because we were there, but that we continue to utilize the bad things that did happen and say, here's how we can be better. And here's what we can do and we can provide. And that's what I try and do each and every day. It's, I always like sharing this, and like we talked about right after you gave me the introduction, like sharing this story of what happened and continuing to try and impact. For me, I find the most fulfillment in impacting other people's lives in a positive way. It's it's one of the reasons I chose to enlist in the Marine Corps, other than being a red-blooded American that wants to go kill the bad guy. Like, I knew it was somewhere I could help other folks that were less fortunate. And it's never an obligation to share my story. It's never an obligation, I would say, is the best way that I can put it. But it's a responsibility, because I have the ability to talk about it. I have the ability to live my life the way that I choose to. And, I'm a firm believer that weakness is a choice and happiness is a choice too. Like, there's plenty of things I don't want to do every day. There's plenty of reasons. Most would be like, yeah, like I understand why you want to be a lazy piece of shit, or I understand why you just don't want to do anything, or, you know, you want to be an asshole. Like this happened to you, but that's not who I choose to be, because that's not who my friends who aren't here anymore would want me to be. They'd want me to continue living my life in a positive way, and, you know, taking the most out of this life and trying to do the most good for other people. So that's ultimately, I think, out of all the bad, it's continuing to shed light on the truth, and holding people accountable. Hopefully, I'm not a hopeful person, but, you know, we can try, and I'll at least be able to say that I died trying, you know, to get some answers, and hold people accountable. And even if it's just that I know I'm in a unique position where I've been given a significant platform online, and, you know, I get opportunities to speak every now and then, and there's nothing more important to me than that. It's like showing people like, yeah, bad things can happen to you, but you can still come out on top.
Yeah, absolutely. I know mindset is critically important in virtually anything, but especially to get through the type of injury that you sustained and the type of things that you saw over there. And in law enforcement and military, there's a saying that, and I know you're very familiar with this one, you can't train too much for a job that can kill you.
Absolutely.
And maybe a civilian adaptation of that might be, you know, just don't be a victim. I'm not a victim. Those two sayings seem to kind of sum up your whole being, or your whole takeaway from this entire ordeal, and that you're taking what many would say is an absolutely horrific experience, and you're turning that into a positive thing where you can contribute and help other people that may be in a very bad place. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how important mindset was, and probably still is, in your recovery.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, I think one of the, you know, everyone who gets, you know, wounded, or maybe they, you know, get cancer, or they get hit by a car, or they get some sort of illness or injury. I mean, for me, and I know a lot of the wounded guys, everyone goes through it. Everyone deals with it differently. And what I like to share is that, you know, pain, trauma, struggle, strife, grief, it's all relative to the things that you've been through in your life. And, you know, I'll never diminish anyone else's trauma, or, you know, what they've gone through. But there's also, like you said, you know, it's the whole never a victim. Like there's a line where it's like, yeah, I feel sorry for myself. We've all felt sorry for ourselves, but I'm not going to, you know, I'll never be a victim of what's happened to me. And, you know, that's ISIS winning, right? That's like our government winning. That's anyone else out there who wanted to kill us, who wanted us to fail. Like that's them winning. And for me, like, choosing to be positive, like, it's the most important thing. And, for me, what I like to share is that, you know, who I am. I've grown a lot since getting wounded, but who I am today is who I was before I got blown up. And it goes along with, you know, you can never train too hard for a job that can kill you. And I think it's important to remember, like you said, whether it's military, law enforcement, civilian or not, or otherwise, you could get hit by a car tomorrow. You're more likely to get hit by a car and die than be killed in combat, right? And here I am. Like, I've had friends that were killed in combat. I've been wounded. I died like 6 or 7 times and was flatlined and was resuscitated each and every time. And my surgeons and every person in my line of medical care told me throughout, you know, the 45 surgeries, they're like, the only reason that you're alive, very obviously, other than like my friends that applied tourniquets to me and provided aid, and the medical personnel as well. They're like, the only reason you're alive is because of how physically fit you were at your point of injury. Like, you would not have survived. I was right in the center of the cone of fire, of the blast. I mean, everyone to the left and to my right was dead. I was, you know, my stomach was ripped open, left testicle exploded, right arm, left leg. Obviously they were there, but there wasn't much left of them. Arteries ripped open. I was hit with 150 steel ball bearings. Liver, bladder, and I think spleen all lacerated and punctured. Left kidney was destroyed. I lost 157 centimeters in my large and small intestine. 2/3 of my transverse colon had pretty much completely bled out and gone into the last stage of shock. And they're like, we have no idea how this guy's alive, like, at every point. And I went from 210 pounds to 110 pounds by the time I was like into the ICU, from getting blown up. And it was just like surgery every day or every 2 days.
Yeah, like almost 50 surgeries, right?
Yeah.
And 50 surgeries.
Yeah, it was 45.
Well, at what point did you wake up, Tyler? Like, how long after this happened were you conscious or coherent?
So I was awake for pretty much all of it. I mean, I was
No kidding.
a lot of it. Yeah, a lot of it was. I mean, I was awake, but I'm like incoherently slobbering and screaming and yelling at my buddies and stuff. But I can see what's going on, or I know what's going on. And towards the end of it, I was probably like actually, awake or in and out of consciousness for the first 15 minutes post blast up until like getting to the roll 2 to the hospital. And even then, like my, doctors were like, what do you remember from, like, the guys, people who worked on me? They're like, what do you remember from being there? And I was like, well, I remember being on the ground, people putting an intubation tube down my throat. And I was like screaming and yelling, wow, like, I can fucking breathe. And they're like saying, like, two people above me working on me and giving this detailed description of what happened as I'm on the ground or on the operating table there in Afghan. And they're like, yeah, what's crazy is all that happened, but you weren't really alive. Like, you weren't awake, your eyes weren't open, but your brain and your ears, you heard all of that and you remembered that's what happened, but you weren't awake. And so, it goes to show, like, I spent, my entire time in the Marine Corps training for what I thought was going to be a career in special operations. And, it was to prepare me for the worst day of my life. And, I'm proud to say that, like that, you can never train too hard for a job that can kill you is something I always imparted on my junior Marines and my friends in the Corps. And, I'm proud to say that I lived that. And, I'm now a certified personal trainer. And I always joke, like, I'm a certified personal trainer. Not that it means shit if you don't know what you're talking about or understand it. But I went through that route through an organization called Warrior Strong, Inc. And they kind of paid for me to get through my certified personal training, and then for me to go through my adaptive and inclusive trainer certification through the Adaptive Training Academy. So I'm qualified to train, program, scale for anyone with physical or intellectual disabilities. So for me, it's like, for the longest time, for years, my gym nearby, I was the only person, like, in my gym that I had ever seen in a wheelchair. And, I took a lot of pride in it, but it's like, it's also sad too, because, a lot of folks, especially who are physically or, maybe intellectually have disabilities, like, they don't know that they can continue to work out and continue to be fit and how important it is.
Or they're just intimidated, right? They're
Absolutely.
just intimidated because there's no one else there like them.
Yeah, no, and you're 100% right. And so for me, that's why for so long, like, I every time I go out and do stuff, like, I force myself to go and do stuff, or, like, my fiance and I will go out and eat and stuff. And I internally am like a very introverted person, but the way my life has gone in recent years, I kind of inevitably am in the, in the spotlight here and there and have to talk to people. And, and I appreciate it because I understand what the opportunity means. Like, I was in the Vancouver airport last year, going to hunt black bear in British Columbia with one of the guys from my sniper team. And some British dude just comes up to me and he's like, Sergeant Vargas-Andrews? And I was like, yes. And he's like, hey, mate, how's it going? Like, thank you for everything you've done. And I was just like, what the hell? But for me, every time I fly, anytime I travel to another state, another city, even, I mean, I meet at least one person every single time I travel somewhere who's like, knows me, knows the story of what happened. That means they know the story of my friends who aren't here anymore. And everyone that was affected by that. So it's incredible. I mean, it's